say I just want to tap in with a quick video that was on my mind. This is just a insight to anyone that's interested like in like content creation, but sometimes like for me as doing content, certain ideas will come to my mind prominently. I think it's probably the same for most people in life, is that a lot of times as you go through a day, you have a certain idea that's sitting on your mind. It might be inspirational, maybe seldom, but it might be somewhat troubling or just poignant. Is that you have a clear idea a thought that comes to your mind that's in you might be driving somewhere. It's like sometimes you can be driving down the road and you just start getting pissed off for no reason. You just start thinking about something from somewhere, from someone, and it starts to engage you as you're driving, as you have time in your hand to reflect. According to Osho, some of your real life thinkers, like if you want like a real according in India the word would be Muni for an original thinker, but it doesn't necessarily have to be profound in someone like sitting under a cave or something. Sometimes you're like a driver, like a truck driver. If you ever had a conversation with someone who's a driver, I had a family member who was a school bus driver as I later became a school bus driver, and he was also a poet. But some of the things that he would say, like I would take a trip with him and my uncle, and he said one time, he said, "What if death means you simply cease to exist? No heaven, no hell, no good or bad. You just cease to exist. What would that mean? And what would that mean for you now? If that, he didn't say that much, but I reasoned that much, and that was impetus for some of my greatest reflections and creativity. Is what if death means you cease to exist? Then, so were you dead before you were born? Were you dead at that point? And if death is forever, has that been forever? Yet there was a reprieve that you were allowed to exist. Then, if you will die at one point, and that death is permanent, as we appreciate death is permanent, did you really exist? Because what memory, what recollection, what experience of having existed would you have if you will at one point cease to exist permanently, completely, utterly? If that is the case, which is not necessarily impossible, you as you're existing in your present lifetime, something of you existing now would have to recall you, would have to have an idea of you to one day exist, and an experience of you existing, and a recollection of you hereafter, for you to be real enough to actually have the experience of existing. So from that standpoint, maybe you as you experience yourself existing is something beyond you as you experience yourself existing. And from that standpoint, the idea of everlasting life would be real if you appreciate yourself as greater than your own individual identity. That greater life that you are a part of and that you also are, no less and no more, would almost have to be everlasting and undying, and living, for you to have the experience and sensation of living, if in fact you are mortal, and will one day cease to exist as a mortal being. There still have to be something of beyond what's appreciated as mortal to attend and attend your experience of existing as a mortal being, for you to actually have the experience of a mortal being. If mortality is what we appreciate as mortality, as we are born, we live, and we will die permanently. But that's some of the idea that I had from my uncle, who is a poet and a self-styled bohemian, and also a driver. So some of these ideas that come to mind while driving are a real full-fledged thinker. Also, people who are incarcerated can be real full-fledged scholars and real full-fledged thinkers, because of the time that you have on your hands, and then also the challenge of being stationary. If you've ever been unemployed, it's hard to get up and go to work. But if you're set somewhere unemployed, you can't go to work. You can't go somewhere to go to work. That's difficult to manage, and that's actually a form of effort that's very significant, and it can amount to being a full-fledged thinker. So sometimes as I go through a day, I have thoughts that come to mind, and I think that these are content. So one thought that came to mind recently is it's appreciated that for every danger there's a warning. I've appreciated that's actually part of this reality. So you imagine, so if you have a cause of causes, the efficient cause, the cause of existence, it would have, if you appreciate how sophisticated cause and effect is, a lot of times we would appreciate that as what's called karma. but the word karma is a little bit imbued with morality as good and bad, which is arbitrary and limiting, and what is reached for with that word is not limited. So it's a little bit redundant, and it's a little bit stifling to appreciate cause and effect with a moral compass, because if anything, life is more so amoral, not immoral, and not only immoral and not only moral, but both at once, and transcendent of both at once for being both at once. That's amorality. That's a lot of what I appreciate life is. That might be what's confounding and stifling about different appreciations of ethics and even religion, is that when you apply a predetermined outcome, a predetermined value to experiences that you have not yet had or have not yet fully reflected upon, there can be limitation in that, in lending a moral lens to things. But if you appreciate things as amoral, you can get a little bit further like that. And that doesn't mean that immoral is not bad or that moral is not good, but that life is more nuanced than that, and more sublime than that. And it actually requires a combination of both to make something as real and vital as life, and to afford us the dignity of making choice to experience cause and bad, suffering and joy, the actual choice that would make our experiences our own, our relationships our own. It would require a complexity and a paradox that would involve both what's called moral and immoral, but the combination of both. So you have someone that there's a scene in the film Breaking Bad where two little boys are fighting, and then they're fighting, and then because nobody fights like cats and dogs, and nobody fights, but what fights more than cats and dogs is actually brothers. That's been my experience throughout life, is that brothers fight a lot. But in that film Breaking Bad, he was two little boys were fighting, and then they go up to their grandpa to settle it, because most kids they'll approach an adult to settle a conflict, and then he makes them fight more. He makes them run it out, work it all the way out. Oh, you're mad at your brother? Let me hurt your brother more. Man, don't do that to my brother. So that's actually how you settle something sometimes, is that you let it play all the way the hell out and you don't interfere with it. So that might be what's going on with life. So if you have the efficient cause of causes, the greatest of great, it would require a certain distance from being inculcated and involved in the cycles of cause and effect, because so I need help and I'm supplicating for support. If someone were to reach in and help me, they would be implicated and compromised by the actual dynamics and sway of cause and effect that I'm imbibed in and I can't handle. So from that standpoint, you would need to be somewhat objective and neutral to be an arbiter of justice. You would need that in the truest sense of justice. That might be a lot of what the birds are. So we see these birds all the way around us, but a bird just can't simply go somewhere that it wants to. It has to abide within balance and catch the waves of the wind and glide within the causes that are already at play, to manage the causes that are already at play in order to be dynamic and balanced. If the bird said, I only like leftedness, I only want to turn left, I only want to use my left wing, it couldn't actually fly and abide within the vicissitude and the changes of chance that are attendant of a system of choice, of free will. You would need dynamic balance and a little bit of distance and neutral, to be neutral within that. So I think that therefore, because we are attendant, we are actually afforded the chances of life and death in this life. I had a friend one time that I was supporting with rides at a church home, and she at one point she communicated to me as a young man that life and death is in your hand. You have life in your own life, and also people who love you and who need you and who you need. You all that you have them in you affect people, and you make real choices. So life and death is in your hand. She said that, but I think that because of that, we are afforded the dignity of making life and death choices for ourselves and others, and because of that, danger is part of that. You couldn't actually taste the realness of what it means to exist without danger. But also, in order for things to stay neutral and balanced, warning must come with that. So there are different warnings with danger. Also, with circumstance, there are different means of escape that are a natural effect of cause, part of the play of cause and effect, but we have opportunities for warning and for escape if we recognize them. And that was on my mind today.